There have been some Talmud memes bouncing around on X. A few passages carefully chosen to portray the Jewish Talmud as a hateful work have become fuel for the anti-Semites of the web. Are these quotes real, and is the Talmud so hateful of non-Jews? Or is it a book that encourages murder, pedophilia, and other repugnant behaviors? Well, I can say that had I just studied that Talmud meme, I would have known the Talmud in about a minute and a half and become a vile person. Thankfully, I didn't study the meme. I studied the Talmud itself. I spent more than 8 years in a Talmudic academy known as a yeshiva. And I like to believe I'm a decent law-abiding citizen, a kind person who tries not to hurt even flies. The Talmud is not a meme. It is a massive body of work that takes years to master. But what about those quotes? Well, that's easy. They are all either mistranslated, taken out of context, or completely fabricated. One of them quotes a book called God Shas. There is no such book. But here's the main point. Because when you call attention to something, you give it greater importance in the mind of the viewer. The impression one gets when seeing this meme is that this is the main idea of the Talmud, how to abuse the Gentile. That all day long those evil Jews are plotting dastardly deeds against the rest of the world. Now, actually, that may be true of another religious group that is constantly plotting to destroy the Jews. Freudian projection, anyone? But in truth, it's not only not the main idea, it's not even an idea. But I don't want to go into each of these quotes right now. I can do that in separate videos. I've already tackled some of them. But for now, take my word for it that everything on that meme is completely wrong. Throw it out. I will tell you what's wrong with the meme idea by telling you a story from history. You see, Talmud criticism is nothing new. The Catholic Church of the Middle Ages, puzzled by their failure to convert the Jews, came to the conclusion that the Talmud was the problem. The Talmud did not devote any attention to Jesus, and instead remained focused on Jewish law. The few quotes that might have related to Jesus make it clear the following newsflash. Jews don't believe in Jesus, but we all know that, right? So the Catholic Church decided to solve the problem of the Jews' obstinacy by getting rid of the cause. And so they took volumes and cartloads of the Talmud in the year 1254 into the streets of Paris, France, and burned them. And then after the Talmud was gone, this is before the printing press, remember, so it was very hard to reconstruct. The Catholics then waited for the Jews to come running to convert. It never happened. How come? They didn't know, but a new approach was needed. And so a converted Jew who had studied Talmud and was known as Pablo Cristiani came up with a new and remarkable idea. Why not prove to the Jews that the Talmud itself is proof of Jesus being the Messiah and divine? Wow. Instead of destroying the Talmud, now use the Talmud to make your point. That idea was very exciting to a man by the name of Raymond de Peñaforte. He was the personal priest for King James of Aragon, Spain. De Peñaforte approached the king with the idea of having a public disputation between Pablo Cristiani and one of the top rabbis in the world, a man named Rabbi Moshe ben Nachman, also known as the Ramban, the initials for his name. Now, King James was a unique person in those days. He had an open mind and a love of honest debate, and so he agreed to host this disputation in his palace, and he even agreed to allow the rabbi greater freedom of speech in the debate, more freedom of speech than had ever been given to a rabbi in any such event before. But I am always amazed that Pablo Cristiani wanted to go on with this, as it seemed to be a fool's errand. Even if I know something about brain surgery, I'm not about to get into a debate with the top brain surgeon in the world. But Cristiani was going up against the greatest Talmud scholar of his generation, and he was going to attempt the impossible to prove that the sages of the Talmud would prove Jesus as the divine Messiah. And he would try. But the first blow struck by the Ramban against Cristiani was so devastating that it was all downhill from there. What was that argument that the Ramban started with? Very simple. The claim that the Talmud believed in Jesus is contradicted on every single page of it. How so? Because he's not there. Jesus lived between 1 and 4 centuries before the compiling of the Talmud. Great sages, such as Rabbi Akiva and Rabbi Yehuda the Prince, lived more than 100 years after Jesus, and not a single one of them was a Christian. Not a single one of them even mentions Jesus. As a matter of fact, Jesus makes a grand total of 0 appearances in the Talmud as a Jewish sage. If he even was moderately significant, he would have been mentioned more than a few times, and quoted. Why wasn't he? Because those rabbis were not concerned with him at all. They saw him as a figure for a different religion, completely irrelevant to the Jewish Talmud, to the Jewish law, which the Jewish Talmud is all about. The disputation concluded hastily, as Pablo Cristiani was completely outclassed. Every argument and source he tried to bring was destroyed by the Ramban as either being out of context, mistranslated, misunderstood, or completely fabricated. Sound familiar? Just like those memes. The Talmud is not a meme. It does not fixate on hatred of Gentiles. In fact, it doesn't deal with it at all. It incessantly urges Jews to behave at the highest ethical levels in their dealings with all humans, Gentile or Jew. I'm glad we got that straight. Peace and be well.